All right, now 3 o'clock. What up? Chad here. Hope you're enjoying your day. The big news, the estate of Paul Allen announced today that it has started the process for the sale of the Portland Trailblazers consistent with Mr. Allen's directive. The news does not impact the Seattle Seahawks or Paul Allen's 25% stake in the Seattle Sounders. The process is expected to continue well into the 2025-26 season. Sean Hyken will join the show coming up at 3:20. The Godfather, Dwight Jaynes, at 5:20 to share their thoughts. Elsewhere in the NBA, Jason Tatum has had surgery on a ruptured Achilles tendon, suffered last night in the Celtics' Game 4 loss at the Knicks. Game 5 tomorrow in Boston. The Celtics are favored by 4.5, trailing 3-1 in the series. Doubleheader tonight starts at 4. Pacers play at the Cavs and look to close out Cleveland. The Cavs are favored by 8.5. At 6:30, Nuggets are in OKC to meet the Thunder. That series is tied at 2. OKC favored by 9.5.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men. Call 1-800-DIVORCE. Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing.
Now it's time for Dallas. We want to hear Dallas here, not Portland, for the 11th pick.
The 11th pick belongs to the Portland Trailblazers.
No!
And the Portland Trailblazers have fallen back to number 11.
Oh. Dallas moves up.
So Dallas jumps up.
Told you that's the one thing we did not want to hear going in was that Dallas pick.
And here it comes. San Antonio number 2. And the Dallas Mavericks get the top pick.
This is unreal.
Dallas going in had a 1.8% chance to jump up to number 1, and they got it. 1.8% chance.
Wow. Traded Luka and then got number 1.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
I'll tell you what's amazing, too, about the Dallas Mavericks and their, quote, incredible fortune. There was actually a report that was put out today that the Dallas Mavericks are not going to trade the number 1 pick, and they have their eyes set on Cooper Flagg. Well, it would seem obvious, right? Like, duh, of course, anyone that got the number 1 pick, we know they're going to take Cooper Flagg, who is going to be a tremendous domestic product, a superstar, and more importantly, the first American-born white basketball player to be drafted number 1 overall in 44 years, which is just simply amazing. Yeah, of course, every other team doesn't need a report out that they're going to take Cooper Flagg, but because Nico Harrison is so crazy, you actually have to ask him, like, you are going to take Cooper, right? Hey, Nico, I know that you're not necessarily a fan of great talent. Are you going to draft Cooper Flagg? Yes, we have our eyes set on Cooper Flagg. Like, you have to clarify with that guy before you do it. And the majority of fans and people I have spoken with, at the very least, think it's a very bad look for the NBA to have the Mavericks jump all the way up to number 1 with a 1.8% chance. And I think the number I heard from Bill Simmons last night for the odds of the top 3 to finish the way that it did, with Dallas, San Antonio, and Philadelphia, followed by Charlotte, it was like 0.014. Those were the odds going into the lottery for those teams to actually finish 1, 2, and 3. And yet the Dallas Mavericks do it. And it doesn't matter what anyone says. People from now until the end of time will be convinced, a large group of people, that that lottery was not legit. That somehow, some way, they're able to rig it for the Dallas Mavericks. Because it's all too convenient, isn't it? They make one of the dumbest trades of all time, sending Luka to the Lakers and getting no real assets in return, along with Anthony Davis. No future young assets to really retool your franchise. And they talked about how defense wins championships. It was a bad trade because they didn't get the proper haul in return for a megastar like Luka. And then all of a sudden they land the number 1 overall pick with a 1.8% chance. So call it whatever you want, but at the very least, it's a bad look for the NBA. And it's unfortunate because the teams that really need the help, that really need the players to improve, who stink, because of the lottery and the way it's set up, you have San Antonio, who's already got Wemby. Dallas, who traded Luka but has AD, and now will get Cooper Flag. And Philadelphia, who's already got Embiid and Paul George. So it's kind of weird, the whole setup. I'm not really sure where to go with it, but there's got to be a better way to handle the lottery to make sure the truly crap franchises are getting access to the best talent so they can improve. And it's frustrating that Dallas would win the lottery because they're so inept. If that trade was truly legit, meaning they did it because they truly thought it was best for their franchise, then it shows how dumb they really are. Patrick DeMont, Nico Harrison, the Adelson group, not the sharpest tools in the shed, if you know what I mean. So the Blazers fall back to number 11. I don't think it's the end of the world. Obviously, I wanted them to jump into the top 4 and have access to a big-time player. But Joe Cronin and his staff are very astute at finding talent, and they do have options. You can take a player, you can attach a pick to one of your vets and make a deal. There are options there for the Blazers to continue to improve. But it's very annoying that a franchise led by pure incompetence like the Dallas Mavericks, are able to jump up and get the number 1 pick. It's the ultimate Hail Mary. Like somehow, some way, this is a plane in a complete nosedive getting ready to smash into the earth and destroy everyone on board. And yet somehow, some way, the captain was able to pull the lever and right the ship. And that's what happens with this 1.8% chance jumping all the way to number 1. And further evidence that tanking in the NBA, while it does make some sense on some level, it's really a dicey proposition. You put yourself through double hockey sticks, you lose a bunch of games, people become apathetic, and then if you're the Utah Jazz, you wind up picking 5th. That's brutal. Absolutely brutal. Charlotte, 4th. Washington, even farther behind. And yet, Dallas, San Antonio, and Philly, 1, 2, and 3. It's crazy. Absolutely insane. So we'll talk about that. Sean Hyken is going to join the show at 3:20. We'll talk with Dave Deckard, BlazersEdge.com, at 4:20. And then the Godfather Dwight Jaynes at 5:20. The big news today came out this morning from your Portland Trail Blazers when they released a statement that said the estate of Paul G. Allen today announced has commenced a formal sales process for the Portland Trail Blazers, consistent with Allen's directive to eventually sell his sports holdings and direct all estate proceeds to philanthropy. The estate has selected investment bank Allen and Company and law firm Hogan Lovells to lead the sales process, which is estimated to continue into the 2025-26 basketball season. The NBA Board of Governors must then ratify a final purchase agreement. This news does not affect the Seattle Seahawks or the estate's 25% interest in the Seattle Sounders of the MLS, and neither is for sale. So a couple of things on that. Number one, what I'm hearing from some of the people I know up in Seattle, the belief is that Steve Ballmer, the red-faced crazy man with the Clippers, will purchase the Seahawks. That's the scuzzlebutt there. And then he can be at Seahawk games during the football season, red-faced and crazy. And then you get him in the NBA season at the Intuit Dome, red-faced and crazy. So that means a lot more of Ballmer if that deal goes down. And, of course, he's got mad cash. But Ballmer, that would make a lot of sense if it goes that direction. So we'll see how things shake out there. But for the Trailblazers, this is part of the process that we knew was going to take place. We didn't know the exact time. Most of the discussion once we got word about the estate and how Paul Allen had the directive to sell his sports holdings and direct his money to charity, which he's done a great job of. This is what he wanted. And so we knew that this was going to come, and the speculation was when. And, of course, most of the discussion came around the fact that they would wait until after the new TV deal was announced. Well, we got the new TV deal, and by waiting, it's actually pretty genius because the Trailblazers are going to be sold for a ton of money, billions. And now the offer that we got, what was it, last year from the Phil Knight Group, looks like a lowball offer because the Trailblazers are going to go for a lot more than that, probably somewhere between $4 and $5 billion. So the Blazers will begin the sales process. And, I'm a big fan of Paul Allen. I adored him. I appreciated him as an owner. And I respect the fact that this is what he wants done. He wants this to be done. And so everything is being carried out the way he laid it out in his estate. and the money that comes from the sale of his sports holdings will go directly to the charities that he wants to continue to support, which is terrific. Now, I will say this, and I know what a lot of Trailblazer fans think because I talk to you. A lot of people are afraid and have had this fear for an extended period of time that the Trailblazers would eventually move to Seattle. That with the Vulcan connection, with the connection to Seattle and Microsoft, that eventually the Trailblazers somehow would make their way up north. Well, I'm here to tell you that the Trailblazers are going to go nowhere. They're not going anywhere. The NBA, number one, does not want the Trailblazers to be moved. They want to have a good geographical balance with their NBA franchises. And once you get a team back in Seattle with expansion, then you've got the I-5 rivalry and you've got the Northwest covered. Portland has long been a valuable franchise in the NBA. It's been a great NBA community. The league is not going to allow the team to move from this area. So I'm telling you right now, it's not going to happen. You can rest assured that the Trailblazers will remain in Portland. And that's a very good thing. And in regards to the trust, as I mentioned before, I went through this with my favorite football team, the Denver Broncos. When Pat Bowlen passed away, the team was run by a trust for a number of years. And long term, that's just not the best solution. At some point, you've got to find an owner who's going to come in, invest, and be a part of the team, make decisions, and hopefully build a winner. And someone that's going to reinvest in the team and the community and the franchise and everything about it. And so now the Blazers are in a position to where they're going to be able to go out. And my guess would be find someone with deep pockets who wants to come in and be aggressive and get something done. And so, yeah, this is part of the process. And I know a lot of Trailblazer fans that I've heard from are excited about this next step to see who's going to emerge and purchase the Trailblazers. Now, the good news is to help further, secure this stuff in your mind, the Trailblazers, one of the reasons why the team negotiated its recent lease extension with the city, that the team cannot move for at least 5 years, is to keep the Blazers here while an even longer term deal is being considered. Any future owner is bound by the current lease agreement. The team right now will continue to operate as business as usual. Joe Cronin will use every opportunity he can to continue building the team into a winner. And then Dwayne Hankins and the team at Moda Center will press on, making sure that the experience is something that we all want to be a part of. So this is good. And this process is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take an extended period of time. My guess would be somewhere between, 9 months to a year. And then you got to get the Board of Governors to agree to it. But we begin. So we'll talk with Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report, our Trailblazers insider. We'll get his thoughts. And we'll also get his thoughts on the Trailblazers once again, just like they were in the Wemby sweepstakes. Same thing last night. One combination away from getting the number one pick. I did not need that information, Ben Golliver. It's just the ultimate package blast to complete the night. And I would love your thoughts, too. Do you believe that the lottery was rigged because the league had a deal in place with the Mavericks? They get Luka to L.A., and they get taken care of with the number one pick. Is that crazy talk, or do you buy into that? All right, we'll keep things rolling. Rip City Drive, I appreciate your time. Chad doing here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. We're going to go to Chicago next. Sean Highkin, Rose Garden Report, our Trailblazer insider, will join me here on the Rip City Drive. All right, let's head to Chicago. He's there for the NBA Combine and can't wait to get his insight on all the big news that's going down. Our Trailblazers insider from Rose Garden Report, Sean Hyken, is with us. Sean, how's your trip to Chicago been thus far, my friend?
Well, tell you what, Chad. This is the third year in a row that I've done this, and I kind of thought that this year it was maybe going to be a little bit less eventful than the previous years, because so 2023 they move up to the third overall pick in the lottery, and it becomes a thing the whole week. Are they going to use the pick to trade for a veteran to help Dame, or are they going to make the pick and trade Dame, and then are they going to draft Scoot, or are they going to draft Brandon Miller? And, the stuff with Brandon Miller off the court, is that going to be something that's going to be a factor? Like, there was that year. Last year, the week that the lottery and the combine happened was when there were rumors about Chauncey Billups maybe, not, trying to get out of his deal and going to Phoenix or whatever that was. This year, I just came in thinking, okay, all right, they'll either move up in the lottery or they won't. Obviously, we find out last night they're moved actually back a spot to the 11th overall pick. But okay, they're fine. They kind of expected that. We'll see what happens with the draft, whether they use the pick or trade out. And then this morning, I'm on my way to the hotel/arena where the combine is, and I found out at the same time as everybody else found out that the Blazers are for sale. So that's going to be my week.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's an amazing story, and we were wondering when this day was going to come, and today was the day. But I'll say this. Based on everything that's taken place and some of the teams that have recently gone up for sale and with the new TV deal in place by the NBA, the offer made by the Phil Knight Group, last year for just over $2 billion, that seems like a low ball offer for what they'll get now, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, back in February, there was the latest list of team valuations by CNBC. And the lowest valued team, and Blazers, I think, were listed at like 3.3 or something like that. I don't have the number in front of me. But the lowest valued team on the current list, this is as of 3 months ago, was the Memphis Grizzlies, and they were listed as being worth 3.2. So I would say like 3.5 is probably the minimum for what it's going to go for. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if it eclipses 4 by the time that the sale actually goes through and they find a buyer.
Yeah, it's terrific. Yeah, this is incredible. Now, I think the one big thing, or at least I know the biggest concern Trailblazer fans have had over the years, has been this team eventually moving, most likely Seattle being the spot because of, Paul Allen and his connection to the Seattle area. But, from what I've been told and my understanding, the NBA wants the Trailblazers in Portland. They want the geographical location. They want to have a team in Seattle. I don't think the league is going to allow this team to leave. So I've been telling Blazer fans that you can rest assured that your team's not going to go anywhere. Where do you stand on that with the team being here long term?
That's the impression that I've gotten too. And obviously I've, been talking to people all day once this news broke, trying to figure out what's going on. And obviously you can never say 100% never until there's like a legally binding, long-term lease with the Moda Center, which is going to take a few years probably. But from what I've heard, it's, it was the Blazers. I mean, you even go back to the agreement that they made with the city of Portland last February when they had the 5-year bridge lease. There's a clause in there that says that if the Blazers ever stop playing at Moda Center, the team or the owner, whoever that is, whether that's still the Vulcans or whoever else it may be, is going to have to repay whatever the cost that the city had paid for the renovations for the arena. So they put that in there to protect the team from ever, to protect the city if the team were to ever move. So that would be a lot of money that somebody would have to pay to get out of that. I know that, it was important to Paul Allen that the team remained in Portland. As far as I know, it's important to Jody Allen and Bert Cole that the team remain in Portland. And I know from the league offices end, the last time a team moved was in 2008, obviously, when the Sonics moved from Seattle to Oklahoma City. And that there was just so much backlash to that. It was such an unpopular decision that you look at, a few times that the idea of a team moving has come up since then with Larry Ellison trying to buy the Memphis Grizzlies and move them to San Jose about 12 years ago. The league kind of stepped in front of that and said, we're not going to approve a sale if you're going to move the team. We want to keep the team in Memphis. And then obviously what happened in Sacramento in 2013, where there was a group that was going to buy the team and move it to Seattle. And the league was very, very adamant that we don't want to, move the Kings out of Sacramento. And then they, were able to kind of get up, an effort for, Vivek Ranadive to buy the team, keep the team in Sacramento, build a new arena, all that kind of stuff. So you look at the Blazers' history in Portland, so just in the 37 years since Paul Allen bought the team in 1988, they've made the playoffs 26 times. So as far as like small market teams, they're one of the most successful teams, and they've also routinely, more years than not this century, they've been top 10 in the league in attendance. So I don't think the NBA would have any interest in letting the Blazers leave Portland, no matter what the new owner did or didn't want to do. And I have no doubt that the Blazers are going to be able to find a new ownership group that's interested and invested in keeping the team in Portland. So I don't think that's something that fans are going to have to worry about until I hear otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. We're talking with Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider. He's in Chicago right now for the Combine, and you can check him out at rosegardenreport.com. Do you have a list of names or a couple of names of potential people that might have interest in purchasing the Trailblazers? Have you heard anything like that?
I think it's a little early for that. From what I have understood, they said in the statement today that the process is going to take into the 2025-26 season. And just for a frame of reference, the Wyc Grousbeck, the former and now former owner of the Celtics, announced last June that the team was going to be up for sale, and this March is when we found out who the new buyer was going to be. So I think it's way too early at this point to really identify potential buyers. But I would imagine, there's only 30 of these NBA teams, and they're only getting more valuable, so I would imagine there's going to be no shortage of interested buyers. But I don't have any names yet for you now.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I think a lot of fans are wondering, too, with day-to-day operations, when it comes to the team, when it comes to Joe Cronin, is it business as usual? How do things continue to work as they go through this process?
From what I've heard, everything is business as usual. Now, I haven't seen Joe yet today, so I haven't been able to talk to him about it, but I've seen a few other team staffers and just kind of was feeling out what was going on. Everybody's under the impression that, and especially with, Joe and Chauncey both having just signed new contracts last month, I think for the most part, for the day-to-day stuff, it's just going to be business. It's just going to be business as usual. Nothing is really going to change with anything. And especially, with it taking potentially months or even up to a year to find a buyer, like up until then, I think everything is just going to continue as it's been. So I think, and especially again with Joe and Chauncey both having their new deals, that they wanted to do that to bring a level of stability. Because I would imagine, I'll put it this way, I don't know the exact timeline of when they made the decision to put the team up for sale or when they were going to do it or when they were going to start the process. I don't think they made that decision like today. Like, I think they probably have known, like at the ownership level, at the Vulcan level, I'm pretty sure they've known for, months when they were roughly when they were going to put this, start this process, which they announced today. They probably knew that they were going to start this stuff then, or when they were going to start it, when they gave Joe and Chauncey those contracts. And I think I'm sure part of it is, they want that stability there while they're kind of going through this process. So, beyond what happens whenever the team does get sold and what changes they make as far as that stuff, that kind of will depend on who buys the team. But for right now, I wouldn't imagine much to change on a day-to-day level.
And what do you think, fans should be? When it comes to a new owner, like, what do you think are some of the most important traits? If you got someone else that's coming in to buy the team, what are some of the most important traits with an ownership group when they take over a basketball team? What are you looking for from that group?
The ideal current day NBA owner to me is probably Steve Ballmer. It seems like he's, just writes the checks and gets out of the way and doesn't try to meddle too much in basketball decisions. A lot of these new owners kind of run into trouble when they think that, because they paid X amount of billions of dollars for a team, or because, because they were successful in their other businesses, that they're qualified to make basketball decisions. And then you run into things like, how involved Matt Ishbia has been with the Suns as far as like roster moves and how much of a disaster that's been and other stuff like that. So, but somebody like Steve Ballmer, you look at that, like that would be kind of the ideal scenario as far as a type of owner, but it's way too early to know kind of what that's going to look like.
What's been the reaction of the Trailblazer fans you've heard from at the news today?
People seem pretty happy about it. I would say cautiously optimistic, because obviously a lot of fans, for whatever reason you want to throw out there, have been kind of hoping that the team would get sold at a certain, for a long time. Obviously you've heard a little bit of the Seattle stuff and, is the team going to leave? Again, I don't think that's a real serious possibility, but there's a little bit of it that's out there, and then there's a little bit of like people are hoping that it's whoever ends up buying the team is the right person for it. But I think generally people are pretty happy about it.
We're talking with Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. He's in Chicago for the NBA Draft Combine. What was your reaction to Dallas with a 1.8% chance jumping all the way up to number 1 to have access to Cooper Flagg?
I just started laughing, man. I was in the room, the room where I was like locked away with a bunch of other reporters and team and league representatives when it happened. We all just looked at each other and just started laughing when that happened, because it's just like it's too ridiculous to even just you can't even be mad at it because it's so on the nose and it's so absurd that that's how it shook out. But it happened. It is what it is.
All right, this is important because you've actually seen behind the scenes. You're sequestered away, and you get a chance to see how the lottery goes down. The majority of people I have seen online and heard from, they think that something fishy has gone down with this lottery, that, the Mavericks wind up with the number 1 pick. How difficult would it be, based on what you've seen behind the scenes with the lottery, to rig something like that?
They go so far above and beyond to just make sure that every single step of the process is visible to everybody in the room. It's transparent and it's above board. And that's honestly part of the reason why they let all of, a few media members into the room in the first place to watch it, because if they wanted to rig it, they could just say, hey, we did it behind closed doors. Nobody who's not employed by the league saw it. You're just going to have to trust us that it was legit. But they let us in there. And, if we saw any kind of like shenanigans with it, somebody would report on it. But I've seen the process 3 times now, and it would be pretty hard to, even if they wanted to rig it, it would be pretty hard to do that.
All right. In terms of the process, kind of give us an idea of what's going on what are you seeing? Are you seeing the ping pong balls pop out? What are you seeing exactly? How does it work?
So the balls are in like this hopper thing. There's 14 ping pong balls. They're numbered 1 through 14, and every team is assigned. There's 1,000 combinations, and every team is assigned a certain number of the combinations depending on what their odds are. So the Blazers, for example, had 37 of the 1,000 combinations because they had 3.7% odds to get the number 1 pick. And so what they do is they call out, every 10 seconds, there's a timekeeper that has their back to the ping pong ball machine, so that they can't be seeing what which ping pong balls are close to the top or whatever. So that's, again, this is how far they go to make sure everybody knows that like there's no way that anybody could rig this. But they take 4 ping pong balls out of the hopper. They say what the numbers are, and then whatever combination that team whatever team that combination is assigned to, that's who gets that pick. And how about this? The Blazers were 1 digit off on both the number 1 pick and the number 2 pick.
That is unreal. So not just number 1, but
which
number 2
is the same thing that happened with Wembanyama, by the way, 2 years ago.
That's so brutal, man, to be that close twice for 2 of the biggest drafts, and they come up just short.
Yeah.
I
guess,
guess,
happens, though.
Yeah, I guess what it is that because of the way the lottery's set up, when you have, teams that are truly awful, not finishing in the top 3, and you've got Dallas, San Antonio, and Philadelphia right up there at the top, I guess at the very least, it's just not really a good look for the NBA. That's a rough look, wouldn't you say?
Well, I mean, what were these flattened lottery odds designed to do? They were designed to stop teams from being unwatchably bad on purpose. And you look at the teams that really committed to that. We kind of thought the Blazers were going to be one of those teams for the first half of this season before they started winning. But if you look at the teams that really committed to that the whole season, Utah fell back, didn't get rewarded for it. Washington fell back, didn't get rewarded for it. Brooklyn, Toronto, most of the teams that were really egregiously tanking the whole season didn't end up getting the reward for it. And now they look like kind of silly because they just threw a whole season away and didn't get the payoff. And now they're going to have a worse pick than anybody thought they were going to have. And meanwhile, some of these teams that, in the Spurs case, they were like right in the play-in mix until Wembanyama had his injury stuff. And then, some of these other teams had better seasons, and the odds happened to hit, and they got, the Mavericks, even with the Luka trade and with everything else, they were a play-in team, and then they won the lottery. So it's like, I think the message that they're trying to send here, or the message that, I think people are getting, is that you can try to be as bad as you want to be, and, do the thing where you try to put a really bad product out there to try to gain your odds. It doesn't guarantee you anything.
All right, Sean, you've had 24 hours to digest. What are your thoughts on Portland falling back to number 11?
A little bit anticlimactic. So, it's not as bad as last year when they fell back from 4 to 7. So, it's and I saw Joe last night after I got out of the room. He obviously they're disappointed that they didn't move up, but I think they were kind of preparing for either staying at 10 or moving back. And I have no doubt that this front office and this scouting staff I don't know who that is yet, to be honest with you, man. Like I've been so preoccupied with the ownership stuff today that I haven't even really given any thought to draft stuff. I'll probably dig more into that tomorrow now that we know what's going on with the sale for now. But I'm sure that, Joe and Mike Schmitz and, their staff, I'm sure there are guys that they like and would feel good about taking at 11 if they end up staying there, or maybe they trade out and, use the 11th pick plus one of their veterans or one of their salaries to try to get a player similar to the Denny Avdia trade. I think they're still open to a lot of different possibilities, and it's pretty early in the process. But, obviously not an ideal outcome for what they were hoping to get out of the lottery, but, it is what it is. What are you going to do?
All right, I got two more questions for you. With the Trailblazers announcing that the process has begun for the sale of the team, like for you as an individual, Sean, like what are one or two of the biggest things that you're considering right now with this story? Like, where does your mind go with this? What are you thinking about? What is the information you're trying to figure out yourself with the announcement?
That's a good question, Chad. I want to know I want to know what the actual bidding process is. Like, are the Blazers, are Jody and Bert going to have a say over who ends up getting a team? Like, if there's a situation where one group bids more money than another group, but they decide they like the other group better as far as like what they want to do with the team, and they think they'd be a better caretaker of the franchise, would they have the ability to say, hey, even though this other group is offering more money, we like this other group better, and decide to sell to that group? Or is it a situation where Paul Allen wanted his stuff sold to give to charity, and so they have to just raise the absolute most money that they can and get the most value possible out of the asset? So I'm interested in that, and how much control they're going to have over who actually gets the team, regardless of who bids for what. And then obviously, I'm interested in how this, all the stuff that we have been following over the last couple of years with the arena renovations, whether that's going to play into, I would imagine that the long-term lease doesn't get done until after they have a new owner in place, because they're going to want, whoever the new owner is going to want to, be involved in that. But I'm interested to see how that ends up shaking out now too. So there's definitely a lot up in the air as far as like, what any of this is going to look like, and, how it's all going to shake out.
No, I appreciate your response. That's it's nice to kind of get an idea of what you're considering now with the combine. Take Cooper Flag out of it. Like, is there any buzz around any particular player from the people you've spoken with? What are you hearing in regards to the combine and the guys who are getting a chance to work out?
Honestly, man, I'll have a better answer for you at the end of the week. I get to the combine today 15 minutes after we find out that the team is for sale. I'm not really like the draft stuff, especially because we haven't really. Tomorrow is the day that the media gets to actually talk to some of these prospects. Today they were just doing some shooting drills, and I've been, I was kind of down in the hotel lobby making calls all day about the ownership stuff and trying to figure out what was going on with that. So, I hate to kind of deflect on that one, but the draft stuff has not been really front of mind for me today. But I'm going to definitely try to dig in on that a little bit more tomorrow and Thursday.
Do you expect the Knicks to take care of the Celtics now with the Tatum injury?
I do, unfortunately. That just sucks, man. Like we just saw it happen a couple weeks ago with Dame. That's and I think Tatum's going to be fine because he's a little bit younger than Dame, but obviously this kind of ends the Celtics' chances to repeat, and he's probably not going to play at all next year. He just had the surgery today. It sucks whenever that happens.
Yeah, I hate it, man. I hate seeing that. It was devastating last night, and it dampened what was a terrific basketball game. It was the intensity, the atmosphere, the shot making from multiple guys. It was terrific. It's Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, who's in Chicago for the draft combine. Hey, Sean, great work today, man. I appreciate your insight, and we'll keep reading you at rosegardenreport.com, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Always good to talk to you, Chad.
All right, there you go. All right, he brought up a very interesting point there in regard to the Trailblazers. Do they have to take the highest bidder, or can they select a group that they think is a better fit for the local area? We're going to dive into that with The Godfather. Godfather! Dwight Jane's going to join the show at 5:20. Dave Deckard, BlazersEdge.com, is going to join me at 4:20. If you want to jump on board, the telephone number is 503-248-0620. I'd love your thoughts on the news today that the Paul Allen estate has begun the process to sell the team. What are your thoughts on that? What kind of an owner would you like to see take over and purchase the team? And what do you think about the lottery last night? Are you calling the fixes in? Or is it just incredible luck by a ridiculous franchise in the Dallas Mavericks with Patrick Dumont and Nico Harrison, the genius? Nico, the genius. And he'll be walking around like he's a genius now because he's got Cooper Flag. I love how they had to put out a report, too. Oh, we're going to take Cooper. Now, Nico, are you sure? All right, 503-248-0620. Dave Deckard, BlazersEdge.com at 4:20. Dwight Janes at 5:20. You got the Rip City Drive. I'll go. All right, Rip City Drive. Dave Decker, BlazersEdge.com, going to join me coming up at 4:20 as the Trailblazers once again get kicked in the package, fall back to number 11, one combination off from getting either the number 1 or number 2 pick in the draft, but instead they'll be selecting at number 11. So it's unfortunate, but again, I like where they're sitting because they have options. The other big news that I'd love to get your take on is the Paul Allen estate has announced that the process for the sale of the Portland Trailblazers has begun. So if you have any thoughts on that, what type of owner are you looking for? What would you like to see happen? You can call at 503-248-0620. And as I've mentioned, I've been hearing this now. I've been told this for a number of years. The NBA is not going to allow the Trailblazers to be moved. So at least what I'm trying to tell you is that regardless of who buys the team, no need to fear. The Blazers are not going to go anywhere. This is an important market. They want a team here, and we know what happened the last time a team was moved. It was a complete disaster for the league, and they're not looking for different ways to upset fans. At least I don't think they are. So that's what's going on. The NBA playoffs have been wildly compelling, and last night was tragic, absolutely tragic. Jason Tatum's in the middle of an amazing basketball game. And late in that game, he goes down with a horrific injury. He ruptured his Achilles. He had surgery. It was announced today, and he's out. Now, I would say this, with the Knicks up 3-1 in the series, and they go back to Boston for Game 5 tomorrow, I believe they're done. I think the Knicks are going to win the series. I find it very hard to believe that the Celtics, who have been outplayed for stretches during this series, are somehow going to win 3 straight games to advance without Jason Tatum. But if there's any team in the NBA, in fact, there's only one team in the NBA that can overcome the loss of a player like Jason Tatum, it's the Boston Celtics because of their depth and because they have Jaylen Brown and they have a number of just high-level basketball players, great shooters and great defenders who can do so many different things. So it's very interesting to see where the Celtics are at. But I got to give props to the Knicks. I thought that second half, especially the third quarter where Jalen Brunson had 18 points, and then you had the incredible shot making in the fourth quarter where Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Karl Anthony Towns, along with Brunson, just continued to find different ways to score. Their ball movement and execution was terrific. Jalen Brunson not only is an incredible late-game scorer and a guy who gets better when the lights are bright, but he's been winning some one-on-one battles defensively. I'm just impressed, immensely impressed by Brunson. He is sturdy. He's got a gigantic heart, and he plays his ass off for Thibodeau. And he's got ice water in his veins. Like, he loves the big moments, the pressure, and he wants to take the big shots. And now he's put himself in contention to be considered the best small guard in the NBA up there with Steph. He's unbelievable right now. And that was an awesome basketball game. Madison Square Garden, when the Knicks are playing big-time basketball games, and the last couple of games they've had there, the biggest games in 26 years since their last finals run with Latrell Sprewell, it was great. And then it was ruined. It just had a dark cloud over the top of it because of that gruesome Tatum injury. Let's go out to Mike in Beaverton. He wants to share his thoughts on the announcement today from the Paul Allen estate. Mike, I appreciate the phone call. What are your thoughts on the announcement today from the Paul Allen estate that the Trailblazers sale process has begun?
Hey, I think it's a long time coming. I'm excited the team's getting sold finally. I hope a owner like someone like Steve Ballmer or maybe even Phil Knight, someone representing Nike or someone who wants to win, I hope they buy the franchise. But it's always scary when you mention Phil Knight. They've been linked for a few years, but he's getting older. Like, is Nike really like a good owner? Like, I don't know how that works, but I'm excited though because I want to win again.
Yeah, no doubt. Winning is what it's all about for me. And as I've said before, like, I've been fortunate. Some of my sports teams have had great owners. Paul Allen would be a perfect example. My idea of a great owner is someone that's invested in the team, someone that has deep pockets, and is willing to spend whatever is necessary to make it happen for the team to have a chance to compete. That's what I care about. That was Paul Allen. He would cut check after check after check in order to put his team in a position to win. And it doesn't mean that every decision he made was the right decision, but I can forgive mistakes when I know that their heart's in the right place, meaning they're going balls to the wall to try and do whatever they can to help the team win. And that was Paul Allen. I mean, Steve Ballmer's red-faced and crazy, but he wants to win, and he's willing to spin big to do it. Now, Phil Knight at his age, not too concerned about that because he would surround himself with great people. And so that group, not just Phil Knight, would have, I mean, that's what guys like Phil Knight do. They surround themselves with wildly intelligent and successful people. So I don't think age is a factor if he and the rest of that group still want to get involved. But the Blazers were smart to be patient and wait until that TV deal was signed, sealed, and delivered because they're going to make a lot more money. And that 2 point whatever it was that the Nike group offered looks like a lowball offer because the Blazers are going to go for a lot more than that. And they ain't going for $2.3 billion. I can guarantee you that. They're going to go for closer to probably somewhere between 4 and 5. And Paul Allen, keep this in mind, he bought the team, I think it was $80 million, and now it's going to sell for like $4 billion or more. Is that a good investment? I'm not a money guy, but that seems like a pretty good investment there. Nice work, Paul. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Rip City Drive, Chad Doing with you. The Godfather, Dwight James, we'll get his take on this. And then Dave Deckard, BlazersEdge.com at 420. I appreciate your time here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, what's up? We got big news today. The estate of Paul Allen announced it has started the process for the sale of the Portland Trailblazers, consistent with Mr. Allen's directive. The news does not impact the Seattle Seahawks or Sounders. The process expected to continue well into the 2025-26 season. Sean Hyken will join the program at 3:20, where I already did, but you can podcast his interview on our free iHeartRadio app. The Godfather, Dwight James, will join us to get his thoughts at 5:20. Elsewhere in the NBA, Jason Tatum had surgery on a ruptured Achilles tendon suffered in last night's Game 4 against the Knicks. Game 5 tomorrow night in Boston, New York, with a 3-1 series lead. The Celtics favored by 4.5. Doubleheader tonight will start in just a few minutes. The Pacers will be in Cleveland to meet the Cavs as they look to close out that series. Cleveland favored by 8.5. At 6:30, the Nuggets are in OKC to meet the Thunder. Series tied up at 2. OKC favored by 9.5. Yeah, we'll see how things play out with the Jason Tatum injury. I think the Knicks will advance and head to the Eastern Conference Finals. And my guess is they're going to face the Indiana Pacers, although I think Cleveland has got a chance. If they can get the win tonight and force a Game 6 back in Indiana, they've got a chance to maybe scratch out a victory on the road and get that thing back to Cleveland for a Game 7. But I expect the Pacers to win based on what I've seen in the series. They're so well connected defensively right now, and their offense works at just a different level. They're high-powered. They move the basketball incredibly well. They had 25 assists in the first half of Game 4. I didn't even know that number was attainable, and yet they did it. So the Pacers have been wildly impressive. They're playing their best basketball of the year at the right time, and Rick Carlisle is hitting all the right buttons. So I expect the Pacers to advance. We're going to get the Knicks and Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then that will be a rematch of some of the best playoff series I've seen in my lifetime. Great rivalry, and both teams are playing good basketball right now. But I got to credit the Knicks. They built this squad to compete with Boston. They went out and got multiple wing defenders in OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, guys who could defend Brown and Tatum. They have a big-time player, a big shot maker in Jalen Brunson, who's been critical in the clutch. He's been the best star player in this series thus far. And they put together this roster. They got Cat to have that stretch big who could make shots and be able to score. Everything they did was about Boston. You know, when you're in a conference with a dominant team and one that wins a championship, you start looking at how that team's constructed and what you need to do to be able to match up with them, because you know to get to where you want to be, you got to go through them. And the Knicks went out and constructed a team that could compete with Boston. And it's finally come to fruition here in the playoffs. Now, the good thing is for the Knicks, they had that game won before Tatum went down with the injury. So it's not fool's gold. They had a tremendous third quarter. Brunson scored 18, and they just took it up several notches. Several notches. In fact, when Tatum hit that three late in the game to give Boston a 1-point lead, the Knicks scored on 10 of their next 12 possessions. That's how dialed in they were. How great was Mikal Bridges, by the way, off the bounce and getting to his spots and making some big-time shots. OG Anunoby's been fierce. In fact, I'll tell you what, if I was on the floor, I'm avoiding OG Anunoby at all costs. I don't want his size on me. I don't want his length on me. I don't want him anywhere near the ball so he can disrupt things. He's been great. But Jalen Brunson's awesome. He's awesome. There are certain players, and you've all seen these guys, that for whatever reason, when crunch time hits and you're on a big stage and you need someone to step up and make things happen, there are certain guys that just have a knack for it. And Jalen Brunson is one of those guys. He doesn't fear the moment. He wants the big shot. He's incredibly confident. And his shot making and footwork was on display last night against, we're not talking about a good defensive team. We're talking about a great defensive team with a variety of terrific on-ball defenders that they can throw at Brunson. Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, and they use a different combination of guys to try and give him different looks, get physical with him, make him work. And yet he was getting to his spots, using his footwork, posting up guys, and just wheeling and dealing and making it look easy. So impressive. And I've said this about the Knicks. You've heard me say it, throughout the year. What I've been impressed with is, the togetherness that they show. You can tell that they have fun playing together. They're playing hard for Coach Thibodeau, who plays his stars, his starters, big time minutes. And he's very demanding as a coach, but they have responded to him. But Jalen Brunson is, the straw that stirs the drink for the Knicks. He's just terrific, big time player, and probably now has emerged and placed himself on the Mount Rushmore of New York Knicks basketball. If you had to pick your Mount Rushmore, you're probably throwing Brunson up there with Willis Reed, Patrick Ewing, Walt Frazier, and Jalen Brunson. Isn't that crazy? That's how good he is and how big time he's been in a Knick uniform. And he is the quintessential Knick. He kind of fits the area. Tough basketball player, big time shot maker, plays big minutes. Like, he's everything you want as a Knicks fan. He's been great. And I feel bad for Jason Tatum because he's one of the good guys in the NBA. He's one of the best players in the league right now. And I hate seeing guys go down with injuries. I hate it. Now, Tatum's young, and he'll have a chance to come back from this, but the Achilles injury is, there's no guarantee you're going to come back and be anywhere remotely close to what you were. It's a very difficult injury to overcome. And it's tough for guys to go through that long rehab process because you have to spend a lot of time detached from your teammates, going through all the emotions and wondering if you're going to be able to get right, if you're going to be able to trust your body again, if you're going to be able to be close to what you were prior to the injury, or you're going to be a shell of your former self. Like, there's so many different feelings, emotions, thoughts, difficulties, the physical pain, the work you have to put in. Like, that is a grind. But the playoffs have been marred by injury because it's not just Tatum, but Steph Curry. The Warriors without Curry, it's a rough watch. And I think now that we've had a chance to see the Warriors in 3 games without Steph take on Minnesota with their length and their defense, you can see how important Curry is and what he does when he's on the floor, because he demands so much attention and he spreads the floor so well that he creates great opportunities for his teammates. But without him on the floor, Minnesota doesn't have to worry about a darn thing. Except for Jimmy Butler, there's nobody else on the floor for the Warriors right now where you're like, wow, that guy's going to kill us. No. They can turn their attention to Jimmy, frustrate him, and then if the other guys get looks, that's fine because we know they're not going to hit with regularity. So it's been brutal because the Warriors went in. They got the victory in Game 1, coming off the victory over Houston in Game 7, and then Curry gets hurt early in Game 2, and they're done. Like, I know that series is over, and it's going to end in 5 games, and Minnesota's going to move forward. And credit to Minnesota. First time ever that they've gone to, or they will be in the conference finals in back-to-back years. They did it last year. They're going to do it again this year. Now, the other game tonight coming up at 6:30 will be the Nuggets and the Thunder. I've loved this series. It's been terrific. But the Thunder are doing such a great job over the last 3 games on Nikola Jokic. If he can't get his offense going and get his shots to start to fall at the free throw line, in the paint, from 3, the Nuggets have no chance. And it's hard to say this, but I have high expectations for Jokic. He has not handled the pressure particularly well. He hasn't shot the ball well. And his lack of offense is what cost them the Game 4 in Denver and a chance to grab a 3-1 series lead. It is. They need him to score and make shots, and he hasn't been able to do it. And that's because the Thunder, well connected on defense, and they've got a number of different guys they can throw at Jokic to make life tough on him. You're not going to shut him down completely, but the Nuggets had their chances in Game 4. They just couldn't capitalize. And when Jokic is not making shots, it puts a lot of pressure on everyone else. And they didn't get the contributions from the bench they were accustomed to, and Michael Porter Jr. was a no-show in Game 4. I just don't think Denver can win another game at OKC. I expect Denver to get throttled tonight. That's probably how that game's going to go. I do think it's going to be a 7-game series. I expect the Nuggets to lose tonight. I think they'll get Game 6 back in Denver, and we'll get a chance to see a Game 7. I just don't think the Nuggets can win another game on the road against the Thunder because of some of the mismatch issues. Now, the one thing we're seeing from the Thunder, and we saw it even a little bit from Boston last night and a couple of games in this series, they early in the game they move the ball so well, but what they have to avoid are those late game situations. If it's tight, going too much ISO. You've got to continue to move the ball and force the Nuggets defense to rotate. And if they do that, they're going to have guys who will get open looks. That's pretty much how that's going to go down. So will the Thunder continue to attack like that? Will they run their offense and continue to get open looks? If they do, I think they'll be fine. I've been impressed with Caruso in the series. I think he's been great. Love his defense and energy he brings off the bench. I think Aaron Gordon, he's reaching he's almost near playoff Gordon status, where he's just going to be known as a guy that takes it up several notches come postseason time. His shot making and play has been great through the playoffs, and I'm hoping for a 7-game series there. Cleveland and Indiana has just tipped off. They're underway. Cavs with an early 4-3 lead with 9 minutes to play in the first. So I'll keep you updated on that game. But the big news today, we got the announcement that the Paul Allen estate has begun the process to sell the Portland Trail Blazers. And it's a process that's probably going to take somewhere between 9 months to a year to get done. And we'll see, how many people will come out of the woodwork to buy the team. And, there'll be some time in the future where we'll start getting some, real names about who has great interest in the Trailblazers. But business will continue as usual for the time being. Joe Cronin, Chauncey Billups, as they continue to build the roster. Whatever owner takes over will be bound by the agreement that they have in place with the city for the 5 years. And I don't expect the team to go. I know a lot of people are concerned about that, but for everything I've been told now for quite some time, the Trailblazers will remain in Portland. The NBA wants them here, and they're not going to allow someone to buy the team if they have intentions of trying to move them. It's not going to happen. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Coming up at 5, I've got a 4-pack of tickets for the Hillsborough Hops. So we're going to give you a chance to win some tickets today so you can get out and check out some baseball. And when you're out there, the new stadium is being constructed as we speak, and it looks amazing. So you get a good look at that as you're out there checking out some baseball. So we'll give away a 4-pack coming up at 5 o'clock. The Godfather, Dwight James, at 5:20. Want to get his thoughts on the news today from the Paul Allen estate. And we're going to talk with Dave Decker, the man behind BlazersEdge.com. He's coming up next. Indiana 6-4 lead with 8:19 to play first quarter. Game 5, Pacers and Cavs underway now on TNT. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, as we continue the best of the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing, we're going to come back and you're going to hear one of the most incredible conversations that I can recall from a guy who got fired from his job with the Houston Astros selling snow cones, and he explains the entire situation. Why on earth would you take snow cones into a bathroom? We're going to hear from Bob, the snow cone vendor, next. Hope you're enjoying your Thursday. You've got the best of the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on your home of the Blazers, 620. I was so happy that I had a chance to hang out in studio and also at Motor Center with our next guest. And I was excited to reach out to him today because I love talking hoop. I'm talking about my man, Dave Deckard from BlazersEdge.com. He's back on the show. Dave, what's up, my brother? Oh, I better punch him up. I forgot. I'm multitasking today. What's up, Dave? It's great to have you back on.
How's it going, my friend?
Dude, it's so good to talk to you, and it was so great to see you in person when you're here for Blazers Edge Night. So I'm glad that we're back and have a chance to talk. Why don't we start with the news that came out from the Paul Allen estate today that the process has begun for the sale of the team. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, it's not entirely surprising in the long run. We knew at some point this was going to happen. The timing of the news right after the draft and the fact that there was little or no pre-warning is a little bit not shocking, but it raises an eyebrow. But the process will now begin. This can take a while, as we've seen with other franchises, particularly since the prices of franchises have gone up so steeply over the last 5 years. It's no longer in any way a trivial purchase. It's either got to be done by a huge corporation or by a conglomerate of owners, all of which need approval and vetting by the NBA and obviously the agreement of the current owners. So we're in probably for a little bit of a long haul without a lot of information, with a lot of speculation. Everybody should buckle up.
Yeah, no question about it. So for you, when you get that news, like what are one or two of the big questions you have as you start to look at the story? And now we sit back and wait to see how the process plays out. What are you thinking about when you look at this?
I mean, quite obviously, the number one question or concern on every Blazer fan's mind is, will the team stay in Portland? That's always a concern, a relatively minor one. I mean, the percentages are probably small that anything is even considered in the vein of moving, but new ownership has new priorities, and we've seen it happen once or twice. I don't think that will happen in the Blazers' case, but that is obviously the number one priority, because if there is no team, there is no fandom. After that, how deep are the pockets of the owners? What's the experience of the owners? What are the priorities of the owners is the next one. And there's a slight difference between a corporate-esque ownership group and a personal ownership group. As we've seen with Paul Allen, a person who owns it directly and for whom it is a passion tends to govern differently with different priorities than someone who's in it for a business investment alone. So that's one of the next questions. And then, of course, after that, after the ownership changes, you have questions about, okay, did they keep the same staff, the same management? It becomes a little bit clearer now why some of those key contract extensions might have been important just a couple weeks ago. If they knew this was coming, at least the current management has some cushion or insurance. Whether the new owners stick with them or not will be one of the first questions once that team gets transferred.
Well, you make a good point about the corporate ownership type group versus the individual like Paul Allen. You know, Paul Allen didn't bat 1,000 with his decision making. I mean, no one ever does. But what I always appreciated about Paul is that I knew that he was in it to win it. Like, he was willing to spend and do whatever it takes to put the Trailblazers in a good spot. So I always respected that because I knew where his heart was at. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but we also have to remember when the team was sold in, I believe it was 1988, Paul Allen was one of a handful of billionaires going into a league where teams very much not cost $1 billion.
Yeah.
He paid like 80, 90 million for it, something like that, which is just a small fraction of his fortune. That is no longer so. I mean, the Blazers could sell for a couple million, maybe $3. Who knows? We'll have to see what the final price is. But that is not a trivial investment. And a garden variety billionaire can't just make that purchase without trying to recoup some of that money. And a corporation obviously will want to recoup all of it and turn a profit, which means you're getting a scarcer and scarcer number of super passionate owners that just go after this as a lark. Really, it becomes much more of a returns oriented enterprise. Now, you got Steve Ballmer with the Clippers. Obviously, he's doing that, but this is one of the couple richest men in the entire universe. Unless the Blazers get lucky with something like that, I think you're about to see priorities change and pockets tighten around Blazers HQ.
Interesting. With traits, what are one or two of the most important traits for you when it comes to an owner?
Well, I think obviously some level of delegation is important no matter how much of passion you have or don't have.
Yeah.
The only thing worse than a dispassionate owner is an overpassionate owner who meddles in everything. And we've seen that lead to disaster several times. So what you want is an ownership group who's invested enough to care what happens and to help drive for a championship and a great team, but also wise enough to understand that they can't do it, that their opinion isn't central, and that they need to hire the people who are going to make good decisions and support them. Also, I think ownership does drive culture, and I think we've seen that a couple times. For instance, you had the original Blazers ownership back in the 1970s and 80s who went with Bucky Buckwalter and Harry Glickman and various local grown talents in management. Then you had Paul Allen take over, and he immediately went for Bob Whitsitt, who was a Seattle import, much more of an LA guy. Later went for Neil Olshey, who was kind of also that slick kind of big city guy, and the culture around the team radically changed based on those hires. What kind of priorities and culture and presumptions does the ownership team have? Do they understand Portland and its particular needs and goals and abilities, or are they just trying to simply port in LA Clippers model into a smaller city?
We're talking with Dave Deckard, the man behind BlazersEdge.com here on the Rip City Drive. All right, what was your reaction to Dallas with a 1.8% chance at winning the lottery last night?
Well, this is going to happen as soon as you flatten the odds. I wrote about this, and one of the things I said is the NBA has been teeter-tottering since the lottery began between two basic sides, preventing tanking and helping teams that need the most help. The lottery originally started out to help teams that needed the most help, but it was in itself a tanking prevention in that it distributed the picks randomly. Then they found out that it wasn't really helping the teams who needed it most. For instance, the New York Knicks won the original lottery, or the Orlando Magic got Chris Webber, or what became Penny Hardaway, and Shaquille O'Neal in consecutive drafts. So they weighted it toward helping the teams. But then as soon as you weighted it toward the worst teams getting better picks, the team started tanking again. So they've been back and forth ever since. Where they are right now is preventing tanking, which means flattening out the odds for everyone, making it relatively equally probable that anybody can advance. Then you get results like this. The Dallas Mavericks, who absolutely bungled their season, and by the way, already had an all-world talent they traded away, and got a top 75 of all-time player back for him, all of a sudden get Cooper Flagg. The San Antonio Spurs, who get unconscionably lucky in all of these lottery drawings, not only get Victor Wembanyama a couple years ago, now they got the second pick in this ultra-deep draft. Even the Philadelphia 76ers, who gamed the process for the last decade. There might have been worthier teams in there, including Utah, Washington, Charlotte. Maybe even you could make a heart argument for the Trailblazers. The NBA has gone the other way toward preventing tanking, and this is exactly what happens. I don't know how they get off this teeter-totter and do both, but they better figure out a way, because you know what? If you're not one of those top three teams, it really kind of stinks watching those marquee franchises walk away with the best players yet again.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like Dallas, one of the worst decisions of all time to trade Luka for no future assets to really rebuild their franchise. And they got like the ultimate Hail Mary. And then you mentioned the Spurs. The Spurs now have, with their number 2 overall pick, if they wanted to get aggressive and make a play on someone like Giannis, they would have the package to be able to get in the conversation on that. It's an embarrassment of riches for those teams, and the teams who really stink have no way to get better, which is absolutely crazy. Now, with the Blazers falling back to 11, I mean, what are your thoughts on that over the last 24 hours, and how do you assess that for the Trailblazers and what that means?
Well, I mean, It is what it is. Joe Cronin was interviewed, and he's putting the best face on it, saying it's a deep draft, and he's not incorrect. It is a deep draft, and you can get a superstar player at 11. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was drafted there. So were some other good players. The problem is the quality of your player isn't absolute. This isn't NBA 2K with abstract ratings. Your player is as good as he is measured against the other people in the draft and in the league. And you know what? If you get a good player, but there are 5 players better than him drafted 1 through 10, that means you've got the 6th best player in the league, and some of your competitors jumped ahead farther than you did. And some of Blazers' competitors, in fact, most of them, are already ahead of the Blazers. That is bad news. So no matter which way you spin this, you have to hope that the Blazers get lucky and get that superstar at 11, or you have to just shake your head and go, I don't know how exactly this is going to get solved because Portland just got farther behind in a year where they already started behind.
Hey, Dave, if the team, let's say that they want to move Jeremy Grant, and let's say that that's a number one priority for them, do you think they would have to attach a pick to Grant to move him out?
They might, but I'm telling you that probably isn't necessary. It's one of those things where fans almost think of this like some kind of board game or video game where you have to complete the trophy of trading away all the players you're upset at or too veteran or whatever. The real world doesn't work like that. You can do different things and some of each. And Jeremy Grant will probably be difficult to trade with the season that he had. But the Blazers don't have to trade him away in order to generate cap space in the summer of 2026. They could instead opt to move or not re-sign Anthony Simons, DeAndre Ayton, Matisse Thybulle, Robert Williams III. They will generate plenty of cap space if they get rid of some or all of those players instead. So if they can't trade Jeremy Grant, it seems kind of ludicrous to attach a lottery pick to him especially, or a future potential lottery pick just to say that you did it. There are better ways to clear that cap space. And if you're not going to clear cap space anyway, then it's no use trading Grant in the first place. So I don't really see that happening unless some team prizes Grant. I just don't think it's a high priority this year.
All right, let's talk a little basketball. I have really enjoyed the playoffs so far, aside from the horrendous injuries with Steph Curry and Jason Tatum. But how about Jalen Brunson? How good has he been? And how he's such a big-time shot maker, man. I love watching him play.
Yeah, and this is what the New York Knicks needed, right? And this is a good lesson for the Blazers. What are the Blazers missing? They're missing really that star player to bring it all together. They have some decent role players. They have a good scorer or two, but you don't have that guy who really takes the forefront for the team and bails you out of all kinds of situations, which then elevates the impact of all your other players who are nearly there but not quite. I'm thinking of guys like Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, who are, even Karl Anthony Towns, he in itself is a star player, but, he's been up and down throughout his career, and he's not a guy that I necessarily would bank on in pressure situations. But you know what? You put a guy like Jalen Brunson out there breaking everybody else down, and all of a sudden, all those guys who looked good to almost very good now look really, really good because all the defensive attention has to focus on that superstar, and now everybody else is that much freer. The Blazers will look correspondingly better in when they ever get a guy who can do that for guys like Denny Avdia, Toumani Camara, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's been terrific. What do you think about Game 5, Thunder and Nuggets tonight?
That's a fun series, right? And it is amazing watching Nikola Jokic play, and it is amazing watching the Thunder try to counter him. He's been forced into a lot of turnovers, which are uncharacteristic for him. So even though he's looked really good, it's like, okay, there's a hole in the armor over here that a dagger might slip through, and it's like you're watching it happen game to game. But then he comes back like a big boss in a video game and reminds you why he is the best in the world. this battle is really, really special, and I love watching it. I think personally the Thunder are going to come out on top. They're too deep. I think they have too much defense, and I think Denver will eventually wear down if it goes to 7 games. However, it is going to be super fun to watch, and it wouldn't be shocking to see the Nuggets come out, of course, because they have the experience and really the best player in the world over the last few years.
Yeah, there's no question about it. The other thing that's impressed me, too, how about the Indiana Pacers? The way they play on offense, but also their connectiveness on defense in the postseason. Like, Carlisle is doing a great job with that group right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, injuries have colored that series as well. Cleveland's inexperience just a little bit plays in, but the thing about Indiana that I like is, and again, the Trailblazers lesson here. What are the Blazers trying to do on offense? Play unselfishly, not necessarily slow down the ball or dominate it with one person. The Indiana Pacers have really got that down in the playoffs. They are moving the ball so quickly that Cleveland's defense, especially injured as they are, is just having a hard time catching up. And it proves that you can. I mean, we said the Jim Brunson thing, and it's absolutely true, and the Pacers would not get along well without Tyrese Halliburton and a couple other players, right? But you can move the defense and break a defense down even if you don't go ISO by simply committing to moving that ball so quick that they never set up. It's a textbook example of good and, creative and also somewhat old school basketball. And you know what? Cleveland just doesn't have the defensive chops to keep up. And there you go. Once their offense gets injured and isn't producing, they don't have a lot of recourse.
All right. He's Dave Deckard. He's the man behind BlazersEdge.com, and he's here on the show right now. Dave, as always, I appreciate your time. I love talking ball with you, and we'll catch up again soon, but enjoy your summertime. And I'm going to hit you up because I'll be coming out to your neck of the woods here in the near future.
Yep, that sounds great. We will save either a warm coffee or a cold beer for you, whichever you prefer, and we will get together and see what the Blazers do this summer.
All right, you got it. Thanks, buddy. There's Dave Deckard, BlazersEdge.com here on the Rip City Drive. Right now, the Cavs on top of the Pacers, 29-17. Let's go out to Miguel, who's in McMinnville. Miguel, you're up on the Rip City Drive. What's on your mind? Fire away.
Well, a couple of things with these playoff series have been fun to watch, a little surprising. After watching the Timberwolves handle the Lakers, it's kind of weird to see them struggle, but, maybe is it a matchup thing? Rudy Gobert's not making as much of an impact, but they seem to be struggling with a struggling Golden State team without Curry and just edging out these games. And then you see some series like the Pacers right now with the Cavs. I think some people could be surprised to that. Honestly, I think the Pacers have been, bridging that gap year after year, and they're finally getting over that hump, and this could be the year they make a little more of a run. But that the series that, how you guys said, is most entertaining right now is the Nuggets and the Thunder. And this game tonight is going to be, it's going to be a great game, but does Jokic try to take over tonight, or they keep playing their game? Because the games have been really odd lately. Not really a blowout and then a close one and a blowout and a close one. And it's, we're getting down to the end of it. I want to know what you guys are thinking about the Nuggets and the Thunder, and of course the other two. But I'm mostly thinking about that Minnesota team. Why are they struggling so much with a weekend Golden State team? Is it, are they going to be able to get over that hump this year, or how do you guys see it?
Well, I appreciate the phone call, Miguel. I think with Golden State, they just match up better with the Timberwolves than do the Lakers. With the way they spread the floor, and they can put the Minnesota bigs into some compromising situations. And, it's probably fortunate for Minnesota that Steph Curry is out, because I think the series would have a different complexion. So it is matchup based for sure. And the Warriors, Steve Kerr's done a good job with the players that he has access to. He's getting the most out of them, but it's just difficult for them to compete because they don't have that consistent downtown threat of Curry and what he brings to the floor, because the defense has to pay so much attention to him. And with that, it creates open looks for his teammates. And then the other problem, too, is that these other guys like Pajinski, everyone not named Jimmy Butler, like, role players are role players for a reason because they can be good in spots and go through good stretches, but they're not consistently reliable like a Steph Curry or a Jalen Brunson or the big-time stars that you see. And I think for Jokic tonight, I don't know if it's fatigue or what the issue is. It's probably because the Thunder have been doing a good job of throwing a bunch of different looks at him, but he's struggling, with his fadeaway shot with the one-legger, going to either shoulder. He can't make his threes right now. Everything is long. He's just out of rhythm right now, and I think the best way for him to adjust is to, continue to battle down low, get a couple of easy buckets, and then maybe he can rediscover that touch. Because one thing for certain, if Denver is going to win another road game at OKC, Jokic can't go 6 for 21. He's got to get into a better flow. And they'll need better performances from Russell Westbrook tonight and Michael Porter Jr. I know they'll get solid efforts from Jamal Murray, who's been working his tail off, and Aaron Gordon, but they need the other guys to step up in combination with Jokic shooting a better percentage. I just don't know if he can because the Thunder, even though they've had their issues at times on offense, their defense has been awesome. I mean, connected, physical, and they get after it, and they communicate extremely well. All right, the Godfather Dwight Jaynes at 5:20. We'll get his thoughts on the news from the Paul Allen estate today. You can reach out, 503-248-0620. I appreciate your time. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing. This is a great song. Ask the Lonely from Journey. In regards to greatest hit albums, the Journey greatest hit album is one of the absolute best because every flippin' song on the album is great. Well, speaking of that, I did check out a documentary. Let's see here. I want to make sure I give you the proper name. The Bee Gees, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? It's on HBO Max. You probably need to check that out. It's a terrific documentary. I think it was about an hour and 50 minutes long. And I checked it over the weekend. It was fabulous. And you get a chance to see a lot of behind the scenes footage from over the years with the band. There we go. There's a little Bee Gees for you. If I could sing like Robin Gibb, I would do it. But I can't. But this is a great song. But it's called The Bee Gees, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? Yeah, keep this music going, Shacker. The harmonizing is so perfect. And I forgot who it was in the documentary, but he made a great point that when he first heard the Bee Gees and he was becoming familiar with their music and their vocals, he was like, it's not even fair. He goes, not only do you have three members in a band who are harmonizing and singing together, but he goes, those are three brothers connected by their blood. He goes, they're going to come up with a sound that cannot be duplicated because of the way that the voices blend together because they're all related. And they go behind the scenes on the Saturday Night Fever work when they really became legendary. The struggles they went through as a band, like every band. They broke up. I had not remembered that little detail, and then they got back together. But the big thing that changed them when they went through the struggles to try and redefine themselves, it was Eric Clapton who suggested that they move their operation to Miami. And they started working out of the studios in Miami, and that brought in some different people. They got more R&B, and the rest is history. But it's a terrific documentary. And Justin Timberlake, he's fascinated by Barry Gibb and their voices. And he is interviewed in the documentary. And he's like, they can make sounds with their voices together that we can't even do with instruments. And he just had that look in his eyes like he was amazed. So there you have it. But check it out. The Bee Gees, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? And Shacker likes to play songs where he tries to get me to sing, but I'm not doing it. I'm not going to try and sing Bee Gees on the radio, but I want to. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can reach out. If you got any thoughts on what type of owner you would like to see take over. Oh, this is embarrassing, by the way. Love this. North Carolina head coach Bill Belichick said he has addressed the attention surrounding his girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, with his football team. But he said the media reaction and social media fervor over their relationship is not a football issue. Quote, really off to the side. It's a personal relationship, and she doesn't have anything to do with football. That's embarrassing. Their athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, said, quote, Bill's been great to work with. He talked about practicing like a pro, and he runs a professional organization that is teaching students how to be professional in all aspects of their life. He's a very determined professional individual, and that's the way he carries himself and the way he conducts the program. He's also teaching his players how when they reach their 70s that they can get after it with a 20-something. It's a very good lesson to learn. And don't worry. The 70s is the new 20s. Trust me. You see her? You too can have that if you work hard at it. Shaq. I'm not sure this is a good time to play Benny Mardones, but he's doing it anyways. Do you think Bill tries to serenade Miss Hudson with this song? This song is great because it charted in 2 separate decades and is a great song. One of my favorites all time. All right, we'll come back. I've got a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops. Can you imagine the hoodie having to address this situation with his players? Look, fellas, all I can tell you is the sex is amazing. All right, let's get to practice now. Gosh, that's embarrassing. All right, the Godfather Dwight James coming up at 5:20. I've got a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops so you can sit in the Rip City Radio row. We'll do that next. Be here or be nowhere. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Checking the NBA scoreboard. Game 5, Pacers and Cavs in Cleveland. Right now, the Cavaliers on top 44-31 with 7 minutes to play in the first half. Indiana leads that series 3-1 and is looking to close out the Cavs tonight. Coming up at 6:30, the Nuggets are in Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder. That series is all tied up at 2, and the Thunder right now a 9.5-point favorite. The big news today, the estate of Paul Allen has announced they has started the process for the sale of the Portland Trail Blazers. According to Mr. Allen's directive, the news does not impact the Seattle Seahawks or Seattle Sounders. The process is expected to continue well into the 25-26 season. We'll talk more about this with the Godfather Dwight James coming up at 5:20. And according to sources, the Dallas Mavericks will not trade the number 1 pick. They have their eyes set on Cooper Flagg. It's so bizarre. Like Ty Jerome can't even get on the floor now for the Cavs. He had such a tremendous season, and he's gone sideways here in the postseason. The Cavs season is on the brink right now, but they've got a 15-point lead midway through the second quarter, trying to force a Game 6 back in Indiana. And the Pacers trying to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. And if they win tonight, they would get the job done. Thunder and Nuggets coming up at 6:30. That series all tied up at 2. So we are going to have a Game 6 back in Denver. That's been a wildly fascinating series. Someone had asked me that. Actually, I want to respond to a message I got from one of our listeners. But he was, let's see here. Says here, Chad, I couldn't tune in yesterday. Did you touch on the Blazers' record to finish the season and how vital 2 or 3 wins were to the tank effort? Spurs ended up getting the better lottery position and it could have been Portland. Well, I got to be honest with you. After watching the way things played out yesterday, I'm no longer like I understand why teams tank, and it's a front office decision because you're trying to put yourself in the best position possible to get the best players. But the way the lottery plays out every year, it's not worth it. I mean, if you're Dallas and you got a 1.8% chance and you jump all the way up to number 1 and you're going to have access to Cooper Flagg, the top 3 teams with the best odds, 14% chance to get the number 1 pick and a 52.1% chance to jump into the top 4, none of those teams are there. Utah's at number 5, Charlotte 4th, Washington, I think, was 7. And your top 3 teams are freaking Dallas, San Antonio, and Philadelphia. With the odds being flattened out, I'm just not so sure that, a full-on tank effort is necessary. I'm actually happy with the way things played out now. Even though the Blazers, fell back to number 11, they had great player development and growth. And, they gave those guys a chance to go out and compete and win games, which is important for their development process. And those wins and some of the excitement we had in the second half was powered by their young players, which is valuable. But the lottery is just upside down because being one of the top 3 teams with the best odds doesn't guarantee anything. Nothing. And this year's another example. It never goes in order. Someone always jumps up and throws a wrench into the entire process. Right now, the Pacers are on a 13-4 run. They have trimmed the deficit to 10 with 5:40 to play in the first half. So the Pacers right now hanging tough, trying to get the win and close out the Cavs and move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. And the Knicks look like they're headed in the same direction. All right, I've got I've got a 4-pack of tickets. It's Hops Ticket Tuesday. And I want to give you an opportunity to sit in the Rip City Radio row and check out some Hops baseball. Matt Palumbo has chimed in. Thank you for not singing. You're welcome. I'm like anyone else. Like when I'm alone, like in my car or maybe sometimes in the shower, like I'll sing because I want to pretend that I can do those type of things, but I can't. I don't have a singing voice. So I'm always amazed when I hear people like Barry Gibb or take your pick. We heard a little Journey earlier, Steve Perry. Like, I would just like to, for a moment, know what it's like to be that guy and be able to sing like that. I saw Sting hanging out over the weekend at the Knicks game, Game 3, Knicks and Celtics. Sting's amazing, and he can sing amazingly. Like, I would just like to be Sting for a day, but that's never going to happen. All right, 503-248-0620. We've got a 4-pack of tickets to see the Hops against Everett, May 24th at Hillsborough Ballpark. May 24th at Hillsborough Ballpark. You're going to have a great time at the game, and we appreciate you listening to 620 Rip City Radio. So we'll make this simple. If you got us on speed dial, the first caller through at 503-248-0620 is going to get a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops. Call now. I want to hear from a Hops fan. Call now. 503-248-0620. First caller through gets a 4-pack of tickets for the Hillsborough Hops to see Everett coming up on May 24th. Now, I just found out, this is actually pretty cool. I'm getting ready to take off for a few days for vacation. I'm going to check out some Dodger games down at Dodger Stadium, a few games against the Angels, and I'll see a game against the Arizona Diamondbacks. On the Saturday game this weekend that I'm going to be at with the Angels, Clayton Kershaw is going to get the start. So it's pretty cool that I'll have an opportunity to see Clayton Kershaw pitch once again. And I'll be sitting by home plate, so I'll be able to see that wicked Cub ball come through. So that's pretty nice. But you get a chance to go check out the Hops. And the cool thing is right now when you're out there at the ballpark, the new stadium looks amazing already, especially when you're like driving to the park. You can see it from 26. It's badass. And so if you go out to the Hops game, you'll be able to see the ballpark up close and personal and see all the work that's being done. And if you haven't been out there recently to that part of town, it's pretty amazing the work they put in. It's going to be a beautiful ballpark. I can't wait to be a part of the scene there, to check out baseball and some of the different shows or concerts. It's going to be a great venue. And props to KL and the work of his team with the Hops to be able to get that done and get the funding necessary to make it happen. Because we're all going to benefit from that, which is terrific. All right, let's take a look at some of the different series in the NBA. I'll give you my projection because I had someone ask me what I thought was going to go down. So right now we've got the Pacers taking on the Cavs. Indiana leads that series 3-1. I think Indiana will advance and move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. They've been the better team in the series. I love how they're playing on offense and sharing the basketball, and they're playing their best defense of the season right now, well connected. Rick Carlisle is doing a heck of a job with that group, and they're getting great play from multiple players on the roster. Tonight, you've got the Nuggets in OKC to take on the Thunder. I think it's going to be a 7-game series. I like Oklahoma City to win. I think Denver has done a good job thus far, but I don't think they have enough defensively, and I don't think they have enough depth to be able to win another game at Oklahoma City. But I find myself kind of pulling for Denver right now, but I think the Thunder will win in advance and move on to the Western Conference Finals. Now, in the other series, the Knicks are at the Celtics tomorrow. I think the Celtics will force a Game 6 back in Madison Square Garden, but with the injury to Tatum and the way the Knicks are playing right now, I like New York to advance and move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think the Knicks win it in 6. And with the Warriors and Timberwolves, I think Minnesota closes it out tomorrow. Steph Curry's not going to play. He won't be available. And it's probably going to be an ugly game that will, devolve into a defensive battle. And I like the Timberwolves to win and move on to the Western Conference Finals for the second straight year. So to recap, I like the Knicks in 6. I like the Timberwolves in 5. And in the series that we're looking at tonight, I like the Pacers in 6, and I like the Thunder in 7. And that would set up Indiana, New York in the Eastern Conference Finals, Oklahoma City and Minnesota in the Western Conference Finals. And I've thought all along, and I've said it, I thought Boston and Oklahoma City would represent both sides in the NBA Finals, but that's going to change. And I guess if I had to pick a team right now, I'm all in on the Knicks. I'll pull for the Knicks because of Jalen Brunson. I like Tom Thibodeau. I like Jalen Brunson. I like Mikal Bridges. I like OG Anunoby. I like Karl Anthony Towns. I like the way that team plays together, and I'm a big Josh Hart fan. They just have a lot of likable guys. Most of them are all Villanova guys, too. But Jalen Brunson is awesome. And I think it'd be great to see him on that stage in the NBA Finals. I don't know if they can get past Indiana based on the way they're playing right now, but that would be fun to watch. And the Pacers right now are causing issues. They've trimmed the deficit to 5. So the Cavs are flirting with disaster. The weird part about the Cavs, I know they had the injuries that cost them in game number 2, but they didn't just have a good year. They were terrific this season. 64 wins, dominant, and they looked like a team destined to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I am shocked at the results of this series. But Indiana is a difficult matchup because of their pace and the way they play. And, a lot of times in these series, it can take you a couple of games to adjust to get used to your opponent. Before you know it, it's too late. All right. The Godfather Dwight James is going to join us next, and we're going to focus in on the big news today in regards to your Portland Trailblazers. The estate of Paul Allen announced today that it has started the process for the sale of the team. That's according to Mr. Allen's directive, and the process is probably going to take somewhere between 6 months to a year. And we knew this time was coming. And the timeline has fit pretty much what we've been saying on the show over the last couple of years, that more than likely the sale would take place after the new TV deal was in place. Because now the value of the franchises rose. And the offer that was made by the Nike group, of just over $2 billion, that seems like a low ball offer now because the franchise is probably going to sell for somewhere between, $3 and $5 billion. And the new TV deal is in place. The values of these franchises continue to rise. The Celtics just sold for over $7 billion. And now it's just a matter of going through the process. And the one thing I'm going to ask Dwight is a good point that Sean Highkin brought up. With the bidding process, do they have to take the highest bidder, or can they choose an ownership group that they believe will be best for the local area? Now, the good news is, for the Trailblazers, one, business as usual right now. Joe Cronin, Dwayne Hankins, the team will continue their business as usual. Joe Cronin will continue to build the team, and Dwayne Hankins will continue to work with his team at Moda and continue to make sure that it's business as usual, that they get the job done. Now, the Trailblazers, of course, they got this deal negotiated with their recent lease extension with the city, and the team cannot move for at least 5 years. And if they get a longer deal in place, that'll keep the team here for considerably longer because the new owner would be bound by the current lease agreement with the city. But as I've said, the biggest point, and we'll ask Dwight about this, but the NBA is not going to allow the Trailblazers to leave Portland. So I'm not concerned about that at all. I know some people are, and I understand that. I'm just telling you that based on everything I've heard, the NBA is not looking to get the Blazers in a different market and would not allow an attempt to do such. They want the I-5 rivalry once Seattle gets their team back in expansion. And then we'll get the Trailblazers and Sonics all over again. All right, the Godfather Dwight James is up next. You can reach out to me on social at Chad and Rip City. Telephone number here on the show, 503-248-0620. We'll talk to Dwight and get his take on the news next on the Rip City Drive. All right, very happy to bring on my good friend, the Godfather Dwight James, here on the show. Hey, Godfather, I got to give you props. How long had you been talking about this estate for Paul Allen and when the Trailblazers would be sold? And for years, you had talked about you thought it would come after the new TV deal was in place because the value of all the franchises would go up, and the Blazers waited, and as a result, that offer from the Nike Group seems like a low ball offer now because the team's probably going to sell for $4 billion.
Yeah, I think it'll sell for more than that, Chad. I think it might approach five, actually, um, because the two expansion teams. I think everybody knows who's going to own them. So if you want to own an NBA team, your best bet is with the Blazers. I think so. There'll be some sort of auction, and it'll drive the price up. So I think what really tipped the scales is I've been told they were waiting just on the off chance they would get Cooper Flag. Most times players in a draft wouldn't really tilt the asking price much, but in this case, a generational talent like Cooper Flag would probably mean years of sellout arenas. And I think in this case, they did wait to see what happened. And as soon as they found out how the draft was going to go in the lottery, they went ahead and posted the for sale sign.
Okay, so that's why the timing right after the lottery, that makes sense. And don't you think Cooper Flag being a domestic product will make his value, like on the business side with a team that gets him like Dallas, like what a great value to have someone like him. I would imagine fans will flock to Cooper Flag immediately.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Chad. And he's one of those guys that did play a year of college, so everyone knows him. They know his talents. They saw him in the tournament, and really, I think he's prepared for this. He's played against NBA guys before. He's going to be a smash hit wherever he goes, and apparently, he's going to Dallas. And anyway, that's if he had come here, it would have been incredible. You wouldn't have been able to get through on the telephones ordering season tickets today if they would have gotten that number one pick.
Yeah, there's no question it'd be a madhouse over there. Are you hearing any specific names of people or groups that would have interest in the Trailblazers?
No, I knew of some groups before, but that was like 5 years ago. And I'm not sure now who is still interested, but I would almost guess that there are probably more people now interested than before. The teams are worth so much more money, and it doesn't seem to matter what price you put on them, people still want to buy them. And it's incredible that way because there's been such an appreciation in value over the years for them. But there's also a lot of young zillionaires who just want to own a team. And some of them don't even care what sport it is. They just want to be one of the fellas and, sort of emulate, uh, a former owner of the Dallas Mavericks and, be the next Mark Cuban, hanging out with the players and sitting on the bench and all that stuff that Cuban did.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's pretty crazy. For you, because you've been, covering sports for a long time. Well, let's start with this. I know what Trailblazers' biggest fear is, and that's the team moving. So I've been talking about this, and you've been dealing with this for years too. Where do you think the NBA is on an owner that would want to move the Trailblazers out of Portland?
Well, here's the thing now. Be patient with me. I believe they are going to move. They're just going to move within about 30 miles of where they are now. I do believe, and after talking to the groups, and I've never talked to an actual owner. I talked to a representative or somebody who knows one of them. Um, Most of them are in favor of building a new arena. It just prices out better if you could get a plot of land and do the whole thing. We've talked about it on the show many times, Chad. Get the real estate involved. Get the condos, get the hotel, get the restaurants, get the nightclubs, get the whole thing, the retail places that are associated with sports, and put them all together in one spot. And it's almost guaranteed prosperity. And I think all of these suburbs were very anxious to lure the MLB group out to the suburbs, and they decided to turn all that stuff down and stay in Portland. But I think some of the suburban towns are willing to do a lot with tax, abatements and with free land and all kinds of things to lure a team into their area. And I think that's a smart move. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did that and put it in one of those suburbs west of Portland, possibly,
Yeah.
or even south of Portland.
All right, that's great news. So, and because the NBA wants a team here in Portland, right? Like that's important for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Chad. They've lost a team in the Pacific Northwest before, and it didn't turn out very well for them. And whoever gets that expansion team in Seattle is going to want a natural rival and partner.
yeah,
It only makes sense in a lot of different ways. I mean, first of all, it's one game that you don't have to charter a jet for. You can bus them down here, and
yeah.
a lot of teams preferred to do that. You get your guys together, you put a movie on the TV screen, and bus for a few hours, and it works out great. And really, they're not going to move out of Portland. I just don't think it would play well within the league. They've taken too much heat, and they've been the villains a lot lately in many different ways. I think they've lost the confidence of the general public in the last few years, partially due to the gambling thing, style of play. There's now a lot of conspiracy theories about the draft lottery. And the day-to-day stuff on the officiating and who the league might want to win. If you took all four professional leagues right now, Chad, the big four, the NBA is the one that the people have the least confidence in integrity-wise.
Yeah, there's no question that there will be people from now until the end of time convinced that last night's lottery results were a fixed outcome based on the Luka trade to LA. So I've got to ask you, what was your reaction to Dallas jumping up to get the number one pick with San Antonio and Philly right behind them?
Well, first of all, I'm a conspiracy theory guy. I
Yes.
love a good conspiracy theory. I don't think so in this case. I just chalk it up to the vagaries of lotteries. That's what happens with a lottery, and that's why they have to get out of the lottery business. I think it's a joke. Just go with whatever the standings say. And yeah, the bottom 3 or 4 teams will tank to try to beat each other for the number one pick. Well, now you got about 14 teams tanking, trying to get good picks. And it is just not good. Well, when you have 3 years in a row where the worst team gets picked number 5, you got to get out of that. You got to change that. It's
There's
just
no
not
way
right.
for them to improve.
No, how do you expect them to get any better? There's just no way. And basically, a draft, in essence, is to help parity and help the bad teams get better. Well, it's not working in the NBA. The other leagues don't like it. Hockey's using a little bit of a lottery now, but you don't see the NFL and Major League Baseball worried about that stuff. The worst team gets the pick, and that just go with that for a while. And gosh, when you look at the Washington team and the Utah teams and how bad they were, and Charlotte, just bad for years, those teams deserve a top pick.
Yes.
Don't be. I mean, doesn't it make you sick to see San Antonio in the top 3?
Ah, irritating.
Yeah, Dallas getting the number 1 pick. And even, come on, the 76ers getting number 3, and they didn't even have to tank for it. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. It's just not fair.
Yeah, it's absurd. It's absolutely crazy. I'm hoping that they will change it and give those teams a better chance to compete. But for Dallas, like that airplane, the Dallas Mavericks, they were engine stalled and nose down and heading straight to the ground for a big crash with Patrick Dumont and Nico Harrison. And they get the ultimate Hail Mary with Cooper Flag. How unbelievable is that after one of the worst trades of all time?
It's incredible. It's incredibly lucky, and the lottery
Jeez.
gods smiled on them. And again, I don't think there was a fix there. I think you can fix games a lot easier than you can fix that lottery. I think it's a really tough thing to do. And can you imagine what a gamble it would be for the NBA to try to fix something like that?
Oh,
Because if people ever found out, the league might as well just shut its doors and go home.
yeah, that's
I mean, that's a killer if you did something like that.
true. Yeah.
It would put the whole league in such tremendous doubt in people's minds. And I just don't think it happened that way.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the more I talk to people that have been behind the scenes to see how that whole operation works with Ernst and Young with the ping pong balls, like I'm a conspiracy theorist too. And it's easy. Like if you were going to sell me on the reason why this whole Dallas Maverick thing, and the reason why everyone thinks that whole deal was rigged last night is because the trade and the haul they got back for trading Luka to LA was so bad that the conspiracy theories make more sense than them trying to sell us on defense win championships. That's how you know it was a bad trade because the conspiracy theories make more sense, Godfather.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say this. I think looking at it, the mistake that Harrison made probably wasn't in trading him. It was in not opening the doors to
Yes.
all the offers in the league.
Yes.
Auction him off and see what you can get. That was the real mistake. And I think that's why people are questioning the trade is why did he have to go to the Lakers? Come on. Nobody in the league wants to help the Lakers get better. Who
Well,
wants to
no.
do that?
No, of course not. Yeah, it's really annoying. With owners, Godfather, like what do you think are one or two of the most important traits, like with owners, in terms of what you're looking for?
Well, what I'd really like to see is something I don't think I will see, local ownership.
Mm.
We've never had it. I don't expect it. We just don't have billionaires who want to own a basketball team. Phil Knight would be the only exception. And I believe in that last offer that Phil made, he was I think he was more of a figurehead. I don't think he had a managing or majority share in that operation. I think that was the guy that owns part of the Dodgers, and I think that would be fine. People talk about Phil being too old, but nobody could come in and set your franchise up for success as well as Phil
Of
Knight can
course,
do.
because he'll surround himself with great people. Obviously.
Exactly. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows who's good and who's bad. He knows coaches, GMs. He knows everybody in the league. And certainly even the league office would help him because he's so popular in New York with those guys. And that would still be my wish. And yeah, he's old enough. He may not last all that long, but he's not going to have majority ownership anyway, most likely. So I would root for that. But, Chad, the one thing I've known over the years from watching all these things take place over the years, you're never going to know what you're getting in an owner until he has the keys in his hand, sits down at courtside and starts running the team. You just don't know. I mean, some of these guys look like, Ishbia in Phoenix, I thought, man, this guy's going to be really good. But he's made some really dumb decisions. And I think he's been behind those decisions. He's impulsive. He wants to get there too quickly. He just made some dumb calls and in trades and things. So I've seen it. We had no idea what we were going to get from Paul Allen, and we didn't know he was going to buy the team till the day he bought it. That's
Yeah.
the other thing. These things take a while, and there's a lot of secrecy involved because there's a lot of things having to do with they're having to do with financial reports. There's all kinds of vetting to make sure people are sound financially, and those things don't get out. They're all covered with non-disclosure agreements, and so we're probably not going to know until real close to when it happens. Certainly, names will surface, and I don't take a lot of those names seriously because if you're really serious about it, I don't know that you want your name out there in the beginning. You'd rather have it announced on the day that you take over.
Yeah. Sean Hyken brought up a very interesting point. I wanted to ask you to see if you know the answer to it. With the bids, do the Blazers have to take the highest offer, or can they be choosy in terms of what ownership group they think will be best for the Trailblazers?
Well, I've read the will. You can see the will. It's out there online somewhere, and I have read it. And they're supposed to take, since the money's going to charity, the idea is to take the high bid. But I don't think it'll break down that way because there's always ways of making a lower bid look like a better bid. And I think what you're going to want is assurances that the team will stay here, assurances that the person has or the group has enough money to make it work, and that just all the things good person, have the city in mind in terms of being a good corporate citizen, all those things. So yeah, it could go to the high bidder, and I wouldn't blame him for that. I think anytime you're selling something, it's going to go to the high bidder. But if you really want the team and you're a serious owner, you'd probably be the high bidder. That's usually the way things work out.
All right. A couple other things I need to ask you about. What are your thoughts on Major League Baseball making Pete Rose and shoeless Joe Jackson available to get into the Hall of Fame?
I was hoping you'd ask me about that, Chad. I really, I think it's a shame anytime anybody gets into any Hall of Fame and they're not alive to enjoy it. And I know Pete, he was a disreputable character, and I know a lot of people in baseball, and I don't hear very many good things about Pete Rose. You really don't. You hear a lot of bad things about him. But by the same token, you can't tell the story of baseball's history without Pete Rose, and he's still one of the most amazing players I've ever watched play. And I think. But I'm now coming around. I think the steroid guys ought to be in too, Chad. The ones that were, their talent. I mean, come on, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens. Those guys are good enough players. They should be in. And if we're going to start talking about character and cheating and all that stuff, yeah, go back and look at Ty Cobb and some of these guys who were just disreputable people too for various reasons. And I don't know. Shoeless Joe. A real case could be made for Shoeless Joe Jackson. He hit 385 in that Black Sox World Series in 1919. If that guy was trying to throw games, he was going about it in a real funny way. But they said they did it because he had knowledge of it and didn't report it. Well, come on, I don't know how you put this guy in. Look, he wasn't exactly a Harvard graduate anyway. I mean, and so you're going to put him in that position. I don't think he threw games. I think Shoeless Joe, with his lifetime statistics, ought to be in. I would put Pete in now, as much as I don't like putting people in after their death. But I also. I don't see how you could not have Barry Bonds in that Hall of Fame. He's the greatest hitter of all time. He really is.
I mean, Barry Bonds, in my lifetime, I haven't seen a better baseball player. And I just went
Yeah.
back and watched that McGuire Sosa 30 for 30. All I can tell you, Godfather, is that is my most enjoyable time watching baseball was that home run chase. How can those two guys, how can you not put McGuire in there? The guy was unbelievable.
I was there, and so I know I was there the day McGuire hit the home run in St. Louis, and I would say this, that I don't know if McGuire's lifetime stats, I don't know if they merit it or not, and same with Roger Maris, who had that big year too, but. You're right. If you're going to go on great moments and things that people did, that certainly I think that home run chase saved baseball at that time. There was so much attention to that. People around now don't realize, but you remember, Chad,
was
everybody they were cutting in on ESPN every time one of those guys came to the plate, no matter what was showing on ESPN. It was like every at bat was a big deal. It was an amazing time.
I mean, really, like, if you can't put Barry Bonds in a Hall of Fame, what the hell are Hall of Fames for, man?
No. Yeah, and there's another guy. He was terrible with the media. He was. But that shouldn't have anything to do with it.
No.
What does that have to do with it?
I
Who
like to go
cares?
back. I love to go back and look at his stats for the season where he hit 70. Like,
Oh, God.
the amount of walks, it's unbelievable. He is unbelievable. He's unbelievable.
Yeah, and
Jeez.
people who were on the field when he did that and watched it all said, at most, he got one pitch per at bat that he could hit. They were pitching around him every at bat that season, and he managed to make great use of that one pitch almost every time. He hardly ever missed it. It was a credible season.
Yeah, he's a one of a kind, and he's the only guy I've seen where it's like, bases are loaded, just walk him. I mean,
Yeah.
if you get walked with the bases loaded because you're so awesome at the plate, that means you're really good.
And Chad, people think he's a one-trick pony, but they never saw him play. He could steal bases like crazy, and he was a Gold Glove outfielder. I mean, come on, give the guy some credit for what he did.
Yeah, he was. I mean, before he went to the Giants, became a home run master. I mean, he was unbelievable with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, he's
He
terrific.
was a Hall of Famer before he went to San Francisco, right?
Yeah, he was. And I mean, the other thing is we don't really know who was using PEDs at that time. We'd like to think we do, but we have no evidence either way on any of them, really.
Well, my biggest complaint about that is like, so you got your King Griffey Jr. fans. They're like, oh, he never used. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, okay, how do you know that? Well, because he's a good guy. Okay, well, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel the exact same way, Chad. How do we know he didn't? Because he said he didn't? They all say they didn't.
Yeah.
But, and he was a good guy. So what?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he wouldn't cheat.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, I know. It's a little bit crazy. With the NBA playoffs, like, I've really been enjoying the postseason this year. You know who I'm really impressed by, Godfather? Jalen Brunson. For a guy of his size, his footwork, his ability to perform in clutch situations. He seems to get better when the stage is brighter. I just can't believe the shot making that we're seeing from him in clutch situations. And Boston's got, 4 or 5 guys they can throw at him who are great defenders, and he still gets over. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with you, Chad. The only thing is, I don't really like foul artists, and he
And he
is a
is.
foul artist. But he's probably not as bad as SGA. I mean,
Or Trey Young.
Shea, yeah, exactly. There's another one. Yeah, but those guys, it just drives me nuts to see him doing all that stuff to try to draw.
And once they
fouls.
get a team in the penalty, then they crank it up to another level, and it's like, come
Yeah.
on, man, it's so annoying.
There's a lot of annoyance in the playoffs when you look at
Yeah,
Draymond Green and what's
annoying.
going on with him. The other guy that I really like in the playoffs is Brown with the Nuggets has really stepped forward. I think he's a good player.
He's been
made
playing
big
good,
shots.
and he's had moments of good defense.
Yeah, yeah,
In tough
yes.
situations, especially on guys like SGA. He's been impressive, and Aaron Gordon.
Oh God,
We
yeah,
need to do
Aaron
a
Gordon.
study on Aaron Gordon to see how he's been able to improve his shot making, because now he's reaching like playoff Gordon status, where he's just a big time shot maker. But his shooting all season has been terrific. Like I love watching him play, and it's just been weird. Like they had that game 1 and game 4, and Jokic the last few games hasn't been able to make shots, and the Thunder have been throwing a bunch of different guys at him. It's weird when you see Jokic getting to his spots and not converting, because it's so rare that he does that.
Well, they're fouling him a lot too. They really are. They're getting away
Well,
with murder on him.
they're not calling
But
anything in the playoffs.
it makes it tough when they want to call a foul. It's like, how do you decide? We let that go 2 or 3 times. Now we're going to call it.
Well, yeah, there's a couple times where I've seen a foul. I'm like, wait a second, you're going to call that now after what I've seen? I've seen
Yeah,
muggings the entire game.
I know.
Gosh.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
isn't it always been the case where the big guys like Jokic or Shaq, or Kareem, like the bigger guys always seem to get hammered the most,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah. They don't get calls. They never have in basketball. I've seen it for years. It's just you're allowed to. I mean, you put 6'2" guys on a center, and they're allowed to hold their uniform and wrestle around with them and put them in a headlock or a sleeper hold, and it doesn't matter. No foul.
Oh, my goodness. Well, there's been some good Stanley Cup playoffs too, Godfather. You got to be enjoying
Oh
all
yeah.
this, man.
Yeah, it's a really tough call some nights on whether to watch the hockey or the basketball. Man alive. Every year I watch just to see if the Canadian teams have a shot at the cup. That's a big thing with me.
It's killing
They've
them.
gone so long. Yeah, there's just one team really that has a shot, and that's Edmonton, I think, because they have probably the best player in hockey now. That uh, the Capitals are going to get eliminated really good with really soon with Ovechkin, and so, but anyway, Stanley Cup playoffs are always good, and the broadcasters are terrific. Hockey broadcasters are great. I love listening to them. The networks have real good ones, and I'm pleased about that.
All right. Do you think Boston's done with the injury to Tatum?
Yeah, yeah, most likely. And I had no doubt in my mind they were going to win Game 4 in New York. I thought that was easy, and I guess they did too. But I think we have to take a step back now after taking a step forward on Missoula, Montana as a
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah, we
Because
started.
he had made us, remember, we
We
didn't like him at
apologized to him.
first.
We did.
We apologized on the air to him when he won the title. It's like, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think so now, because in the last 5 minutes of a game, they're atrocious.
Yeah,
They
this
are
is pretty
brutal.
amazing. What's crazy is like they'll spend like 40 minutes of the game moving the basketball and getting into their actions and getting guys good looks, and then the last like 5 minutes of the game they go straight ISO and get bad shots. It's so
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I know. And then, hey, you got probably the best 3-point shooter in the league pretty much on the bench in Peyton Pritchard, and you don't ever bring him in.
It's so dumb.
Is there some rule against the sixth man of the year playing in the last 5 minutes of a game? Is that a rule or something?
The
Why
Knicks have
isn't he
no
out
answer
there?
for him. He killed him in Game 3. He was unbelievable.
I know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. In
crazy.
fact, we need to retract right now. So, no offense to the Missoula family, but we're retracting our apology. He is now Missoula, Montana again.
Yes.
That's a pretty
for
good
sure, Chad.
transition. He went from Missoula, Montana to good coach to back to Missoula, Montana.
Yeah. Forget his first name. It's now Missoula, Montana.
Yep. Unbelievable. All right. Well, nice. Thanks for the time, Godfather. I appreciate that, buddy.
Always a pleasure, Chad.
All right, there you go. The Godfather, Dwight Jaynes. We'll keep things rolling here on the Rib City Drive. We're back tomorrow, 3 o'clock. And right now, the Pacers have retaken the lead. They're up 65-64 second half on Cleveland, trying to close out that series and move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Big thanks to all of our guests today, Sean Hyken, Dave Deckard, Godfather, Dwight Jaynes. All right. Pacers leading the Cavs right now, 67-64. The great thing about the schedule tonight is I'll be able to get home in time to watch the Thunder and Nuggets. Unless OKC, of course, just comes out and gets a 30-point lead by the end of the first quarter, and then I'll lose interest. But at least I'll have time because it's probably, the drive home to the Couve, it's a little bit dicey. Depending on the day, sometimes, at 6 o'clock, it can be okay, like on a Monday, but, you just never know. Usually I just expect an hour. It is what it is. But enjoyed the time today. Big thanks to our guests, our Trailblazer insider, Sean Hyken, who is in Chicago for the NBA Draft Combine. Dave Deckard from BlazersEdge.com joining the show. And then The Godfather I thought was terrific.